House of Kuru, Part 1, Chapter 15. The Curse of Animondavya. A long time ago, there was a person called Mandavya, engaged in deep meditation. He was performing severe austerities for the upliftment of his spiritual growth. As fate would have it, a band of robbers who had just stolen valuables from the palace of the king chanced upon the saint's hermitage. They were fleeing from the king's soldiers who were hot on their trails. "This mendicant looks like a perfect cover for our valuables," said one of the robbers. "I agree. Let us place all the king's gold behind his hermitage and flee. We can always return when we have lost the soldiers." The mendicant seems to be in a deep trance, and the king's men would not dare wake a man in such a state, said the leader of the band of dacoits. They hid the stolen articles behind the house of this mendicant and fled. Unfortunately for the robbers, the king's soldiers had flanked the robbers from behind, and another band of the king's men had managed to outrun the soldiers and meet them ahead, essentially sandwiching them from the front and back. As soon as they were caught, the robbers attempted to slander their way out by blaming the whole event on Mandavya. They insisted that the whole deal was his idea and said that all the king's men had to do was look behind his hermitage to find all the stolen goods. Sure enough, when the king's soldiers searched the hermitage, they found all the stolen gold and jewelry. Now they were in a dilemma. This man is clearly a hermit who had dedicated his life for the pursuit of spiritual goals. "So what do we do with such a man?" asked one of the soldiers. "Let's try to wake him from his trance," said the lead soldier. They tried to speak to him, but he was so deep in meditation that they had no luck. "Let us ask the king. He, along with his ministers, will know what to do," said one of the soldiers, and they left the sage with 2 soldiers guarding him. They took this matter to the king, who within minutes ordered that the men, along with the sage Mandavya, should be impaled on a hot iron rod for their misdeeds. Within minutes of the impalement, all the robbers were killed. The sage's life, however, lingered on. Minutes passed to hours, and soon other rishis, seers, sages and ascetics came in the form of birds to inquire what had happened. To the surprise of the soldiers guarding the impaled body of Mandavya, he began to speak. He spoke with clarity, yet there were obvious signs of tremendous pain. "I am in pain for a crime I did not commit," he spoke, and the surrounding guards trembled in fear as though they saw a ghost or some paranormal creature. They fled in terror to the king's palace. As soon as the king heard the events, he felt a large slump of guilt sink deep into his stomach. Gathering his entourage, he sped to the place where the sage was impaled. The king, along with his retinue of priests, guards, and soldiers, all bowed before the impaled figure, begging for forgiveness. "I am the king of this land, and I have committed a grievous, terrible sin. I have not only impaled an innocent man, but a man in the pursuit of spiritual progress. For this sin I will happily impale myself, O mighty sage. All I wish is for your forgiveness. The wise speak that such a sin will bring both famine, drought, and death to the entire nation. Please, O mighty spiritual giant, forgive this foolish king and tell me what the expiatory rites are for this horrendous folly," implored the king. "This is not your fault, king, because with my supernatural prowess I can see through your folly. This is the work of Yama, the controller of virtue, the god of death," said Mandavya. "I am not sure why, though Dharma dictates that I suffer through this pain," he said. No, mighty sage. I will remove you from the clutches of this despicable stake right this moment. Guards, take that stake down, he bellowed. "No, you will not," said Mandavya. "I will be on this stake from now on, and you will address me as Animondavya, one who is impaled. I have very little life left, and removing me from the stake will drain what little energy I have. I need to preserve my energy to call upon the Lord of Virtue, Yama. He administers the life and punishment of all beings. He is also the god of the afterlife, said Mandavya, and with every word all the men could see that the life was draining away from the sage Animondavya. I will call upon him now to question his actions, said the sage. The king, along with his ministers, queens, and entourage, thought that the sage had quite lost his mind due to the pain of impalement, but they kept up the show and pretended to believe him. In time, Animondavya mustered all the energy he had, and he began muttering holy verses, mantras, and incantations. As he began uttering the mantras and spells, the clouds in the sky began to darken. Flashes of lightning coalesced together. Reverberating thunder coursed through the land. Everyone started showing signs of fear and terror, including the king, who was known for his courage. Wind, thunder, and dust engulfed the sage along with everyone surrounding him. The sage Animondavya, however, did not stop muttering the spells under his breath. He kept chanting them, and they seemed to work. Wind bellowed ferociously as palm trees were uprooted. The king's crown flew from his head. Arrows in his quiver and the soldiers' quivers all flew haywire all over the place. More lightning and thunder filled the skies, but Animondavya did not stop muttering the mantras. It soon started to rain, and rain began to fall heavily, combined with large flashes of lightning and thunder. Suddenly, a large thud was heard. Soon, another thud. It was the footsteps of a massive buffalo. With each thud, the earth reverberated under its hooves. Amidst the thunder and rain stood a massive figure, mounted on a huge and terrifying buffalo. Animondavya had successfully invoked the god of death, known as Lord Yama. Yama looked absolutely terrifying, mounted on a massive buffalo with large horned helmet, carrying a golden mace on his right hand and the noose of death on his left. Two small fang-like teeth were protruding from his upper lips. Draped in turquoise blue clothing, his entire face shone like it was on fire. Even the gods tremble before Yama. For once he takes his whip, no creature can survive his whip slash. They are instantly sent to the abode of Yama, where they await judgment. Yet here he was, towering before the sage Animondavya with a look of terrific fury. The king, his entourage, all the sages and priests held panic-stricken faces and trembled before the terrifying figure which stood before them. His glaring eyes glowed red, and flames spurted out of the buffalo's nostrils, making the deity look even more terrifying. The king was horror-struck. He knew well that Yama was a god who judges the acts of men and sends them to respective hells or heavens based on their merit. Some of the hells mentioned in scriptures he has read were enough to freeze his blood in fear. Now he had just done the unthinkable. He had impaled not just any sage, but a sage who can command gods. He fell at the feet of Yama and begged forgiveness in an attempt to thwart his preconceived fate. Yama ignored him completely, for this was not the place to judge the sins of man. He had been invoked and bound by a powerful mantra, a spell which only a few of the most powerful sages and mystics of the time knew. Combined with a portion of curiosity, confusion, and mild amusement, he stood before Animondavya with humility, despite being the controller of men's fate. He showed respect to the sage and bowed before him. "You have invoked the god of death and virtue. My name is Yama Dharmaraja. Speak now, O sage, as to why you have caused the harbinger of death to appear here, thundered the mighty god of death. Can you see the fate I am in? Questioned Animondavya. Do you feel the pain coursing through my veins? He hissed. I am aware you are suffering for all the sin you have accumulated in your life, said Yama Dharmaraja. I struggle to see, O Lord of Justice, how I could have caused such significant pain in this life to any creature which warrants such a karmic debt, grilled Animondavya. Let me see. Ah yes, in your youthful years, you used to capture pretty butterflies and drill needles through their abdomen and collect them as rarity. Unfortunately, this in turn caused enormous pain to little creatures. You are now suffering for the actions committed in your youth, said the mighty god of death. How do you see any justice, O mighty harbinger of death, in punishing a man who performed silly follies under the ignorance of youth? That too, a man who has reformed into a vow-fulfilling sage of tremendous virtue, asked Animondavya. This was true. The punishment hardly fitted the crime. Yama, the god of death, could not answer him. Perhaps, dear Yama, you have lost your touch? Asked Animondavya, as Yama still could not answer him. Animondavya pronounced a terrible curse. For your misguided deliverance of justice, I, Animondavya, curse you to be born into the world of mortals to understand the true meaning of virtue, righteousness, and justice. You will be born to a low-class servant who served the seer Vyasa, called Parishrami. This will be your repentance for causing me such unimaginable pain, bellowed Animondavya. And with it, he breathed his last. So be it, said Yama as the clouds cleared, and he disappeared to the netherworlds. As soon as Yama left to the netherworlds, Animondavya's body, along with the stake he was impaled upon, caught fire and burned to the ground.
I hope you liked today's episode of The House of Kuru. If you have not already, please subscribe to this channel and like this video so that you will be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thank you.